In July, Karina Stables encountered something extremely scary. That's exactly what we're about to watch. Are aliens real or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Without further ado, let's get straight into
British
the
Columbia.
video.
Controversial story about a UFO encounter is the Karina Stables experience. It was the summer night of July 17th, 1991, when Karina saw a strange hovercraft cruise above her apartment in Aldergrove, British Columbia, located on the west coast of Canada. A few minutes earlier, Karina heard the doorbell ring and opened the door for her guest.
Scary.
Her kids were fast asleep in their rooms, so she had her guest relax on the patio as they drank tea. Just then, they both saw a massive flying aircraft that left them thunderstruck. 12 years later, Karina would have an equally frightening ordeal. Was this a coincidence? Did she make it all up, or was Karina being targeted?
Good questions. We're about to find out the answers. So go
Let's
subscribe to my
rewind
tech
back
channel.
to that night in 1991. You see,
Smash the like
the
button.
guest Karina had over was actually her boyfriend at the time. They had been talking for a while, and it seemed like they were ready to take the next step. Prior to this relationship, she had parted ways with her husband and wanted to find a calm and safe place to live with her children, a son and daughter. Karina suggested they watch the starry night sky and get some fresh air on the back patio. This was the perfect spot for his proposal, so he thought. While sharing a pot of tea, she saw some massive object floating in the sky. "Look up!" The duo peered up in awe to see a boomerang-shaped object hovering silently above them. The hovercraft was the size of a football field, and yet you could hear a feather fall. The ship was very dark, and not one source of light came from it. In fact, the only way they could make out its structure was when it covered the stars in the night sky. The frogs stopped croaking, crickets stopped chirping, dead silence with an immediate rush of claustrophobia. Karina's boyfriend felt very uneasy and suggested they head back inside, but Karina just stood there, on the patio, gazing at the ship. A few minutes later, her boyfriend came out to the patio, surprised to see her standing in the same spot he left. According to him, she had been gone for about 45 minutes. Karina thought lightly of it and claimed she'd just been standing where he left her for about 2 to 3 minutes, but he insisted she was gone for way longer than that. He had been extremely worried about her and gone searching the surrounding area. "I said I was outside just for a few minutes, and he said no, you were gone over 45 minutes. That's impossible." Apparently, this incident was so disturbing to her boyfriend, he wasn't willing to see her anymore. In his shoes, would you have done the same?
That bad?
Keep in mind, he was planning to propose not so long ago. Regardless, the only person she had shared this bizarre imagery with had left her, and telling her little kids was out of the options. Well, she had 2 more. Stay in silence and pretend nothing happened, or contact the planetarium in Vancouver. She did the latter. After speaking with an official over the phone, her case was redirected to the UFO Center in British
You're gonna
Columbia.
get yourself abducted.
Karina was initially skeptical about reporting to the planetarium, due to the ridicule she might receive from such a claim, but decided that she needed to speak up about her experience. She needed answers, and fast. Here's the kicker. According to the investigators at UFO for British Columbia, she wasn't the only one that saw the gigantic spacecraft that evening, as there had been multiple reports of strange sightings, and over 15 witnesses who had seen similar objects floating in the night sky. A few days after the incident, Karina began to wonder what really went down that night.
She began to wonder what really went down that night. I want to know, have you ever seen a UFO before? Let me know in the comment section down below. Once you're there, smash the like button.
Since there was living proof about the mystery airships, her main question was, what actually happened in those 45 minutes? This incident opened up some deeply buried memories, but let's travel back 21 years and 9 months to fully understand. Someday in October 1969, Karina recalled playing hide and seek with her friends in the forest. Soon, everywhere was dark and silent. She had lost her friends, and Karina felt this weird sensation, almost like something or someone was chasing her. Without a second thought, Karina started sprinting to her house around the corner.
Wrong,
Why
bro.
she was running or who she was running from seemed trivial at that moment. When she got home, her parents were relieved as they claimed she'd been gone a while, but according to Karina, she was just outside for a few.
Karina acted like the opposite of the movies. You know, the white girls were like, what was that? Let's check it out. Let's check it out. Who's there? She ran for her life. She said, not today. I'm out.
Not so surprisingly, with a case
Gone.
of abduction, the abductee returns with unusual marks on their body. I mean, think about it. Wouldn't it be more suspicious if a victim of alien abduction had no marks whatsoever on their bodies? After a while, Karina discovered some on her body and paid the doctor a visit. According to her doctor, there was no explanation as to how she got the strange marks. One night, Karina woke up and saw a mysterious-looking creature in her house.
That's
At
a
first,
demon.
she thought it couldn't be real. Maybe she was having a nightmare, until she discovered her daughter painting the same green alien she had seen earlier. Her daughter
hell
drew
no.
2 alien figures, and one of them had a pumpkin head, whom the daughter called a doctor. Something
That's
was
not
wrong.
a doctor. That's a demon.
What were the
That's
odds
other
her
demon.
child would draw the same aliens that were chasing her?
That's a demon.
Well,
Goosebumps, man.
This painting was enough to trigger another memory for Karina Sables, strong enough to remember that night in Aldergrove. A few seconds after her
goosebumps.
boyfriend went inside, Karina recalls looking up at the ship as she was suddenly taken inside. She claimed to be tied up and confined in a very big room. Right then, a gray alien-like figure with large black almond-shaped eyes approached her and telepathically introduced himself as a doctor. After that, she claims to have undergone a series of medical examinations. Here's where it gets dark. Karina added that she later found herself in a room filled with human fetuses. She said that those aliens were producing human hybrids by impregnating women and then removing fetuses from them. You see, over the years, she always had reproduction problems. Even her mother experienced similar issues.
Oh, my
Karina
days.
also alleged that she frequently experienced symptoms similar to pregnancy, despite not being pregnant. What's more, the doctors found no sign of pregnancy. The mother of 2 had gone through something very scary. Seeing a huge spacecraft might sound amazing, but becoming a lab subject is a whole different story. Why was she selected? Could she have avoided this by just going inside many nights ago? Frustrated and confused, Karina decided Aldergrove was no longer safe, and she needed to move with the kids to Okanagan Valley.
As if make it make sense. As if the aliens can't just fly next. Oh, there she is. They just fly next door.
Located somewhere between Canada and the United States border.
I'm sorry, guys.
12 years. That's exactly how long it took for the aliens to come back, visiting Karina.
It took 12 years to travel and fly that football-like spaceship over to... Oh my days, these aliens are idiots.
In 2003. On the 23rd of July 2003, Karina and her friend, Jane, were returning home at midnight when the duo made last-minute plans for stargazing. They drove to a quiet spot in Glenmore, British Columbia. Although the traffic was very busy, especially for such a late hour, it would suddenly decrease shortly after they chose a spot to pull off the road. After shutting off the car's ignition, both women took to the roof of the car as Karina pointed to the black sky with her flashlight making traces of the stars, while Jane explored through a pair of binoculars. Within a few seconds of stargazing, Karina could make out 3 stars in the sky in a distinctive triangular shape. The stars were extremely bright and solid white. Then, they began moving together as one object. The 2 women briefly considered the possibility that it was a plane, but quickly ruled out that idea, knowing that planes don't typically hover in place. Moreover, the lights were now changing to a vibrant neon green. The object came to a halt once again, hovering above the suddenly deserted highway. At this point, their looks of awe had morphed into concern and anxiety. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't they immediately drive home? Well, some people are just curious to a fault. According to Karina, she reached for the car's headlights and switched them off. She decided to use the flashlight to search through the darkness. Through one beam of light, both women could see some pairs of eyes and thought they were wild animals. But in Karina's words, once you really look, your brain takes it in.
Goodness
In
me.
front of them and heading in their direction were 5 creatures, each around
Doctors.
4 feet tall, with thin gray shoulders and an equally slender frame. Fight or flight finally kicked in as Karina and Jane felt a surge of fear rush through. Both women quickly tried to get inside the car. However, the pair struggled to do so as everything moved in slow motion. Karina likened the experience to being trapped in quicksand. Despite this, they eventually reached the car and slammed both doors shut behind them. For some reason, the car's ignition refused to start as the strange-looking creatures approached. After a few seconds of panic, screaming, and tampering, the vehicle started and they hastily drove off, heading back the same road they came. Both women described a weird sensation that they couldn't quite explain. Karina recounted the sensation as a sudden, intense jolt, like a battery had been discharged into her, and Jane reported a similar experience, saying it felt like an electric charge was pulsing through her body. Remember, a few moments ago it seemed like there was no traffic, but suddenly they found themselves surrounded by a sea of brake lights and honking horns. Both women were very confused as to what just happened. Where did these cars suddenly come from? What was that strange sensation? And more importantly, what were those creatures? Karina became frantic, connecting the dots. Both women suddenly froze when they noticed the clock on the dashboard.
Oh, gosh,
They had only been out of the car a matter of minutes. However, according to the time, almost half an hour had gone by, time that neither woman could recall. Shortly after, both women began to wonder if they had shared a strange hallucination or if they had simply imagined the whole thing. However, as they drove home along a road bordering a large field, the spacecraft with the glowing green lights almost seemed to appear out of thin air. This time, the object appeared very low in the sky, moving in a stop and start pattern. It repeated this pattern several times. Karina eventually brought the car to a halt, leaving the engine running, and as soon as she did, the object closed in. Instead of staying on the road, she drove the vehicle into an orchard, navigating through the trees. Finally, she brought the car to a stop. With no external lights and the car's power turned off, she hoped they could remain hidden there until the strange object moved on.
As if they
Now,
can't
if you
find them.
asked me, this was extremely risky, considering the fact that the spacecraft could either move really quickly or teleport. How else could you explain something so massive in Karina's words suddenly appearing? Even so, they remained silent for several minutes
Wait, is this a true story? Have you guys heard about this before? Is this a true
before
story?
Jane
or
told
not?
Karina to look out the front window. 3 green lights were hovering above, visible through the trees. At first, the lights moved in unison when the object moved, but then separated and zoomed off. Karina seized the chance by driving straight home. Once they arrived at Karina's house, both women found some disturbing evidence of what they had just encountered. The very next day, the duo discovered some strange markings and bruises on their bodies. For instance, Karina would find a large bruise on her left breast and a similar one underneath her foot. According to her, they were
alien was on some
extremely
other
painful
stuff.
to touch. Jane also reported feeling very unwell that morning, with a sharp pain in her lower back. When Karina examined it, she found a circle burned into her skin. Karina checked the same area on her back and noticed a very similar marking. They also had 3 strange finger marks on each of their thighs. Shaken by the whole incident, Jane decided to move back home a few days later, but stopped by the doctor for examination. The doctor claimed the markings were very similar to a radiation burn. Now that's odd. After the sighting, Karina's 18-year-old son came to live with her for a few months. During this time, she noticed something disturbing on his back, which not only alarmed her, but also triggered vivid memories of her own traumatic experience from childhood. On her
He's
son's
getting
back,
violated as
she
well?
noticed a peculiar triangular mark with strange circular marks inside it. This sparked a vivid memory from her own childhood. At the age of 12, she had woken up one morning to find a similar scoop mark on her leg. The similarity between the two markings was too striking to ignore. Karina couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than mere coincidence.
Wow.
What made her even more concerned was when her son was only 9, a small hole was discovered in his spine due to a mystery infection, one that would take months of antibiotics and treatment to combat. With this in mind, she would take her son to seek medical attention regarding the strange scoop marks on his back. However, despite intense examination, the doctor could provide no explanation for the marks. You see, if you remotely accepted Karina's testimony,
The doctors could provide no explanation. By doctors, do you mean the aliens who are calling themselves doctors or the real doctors?
as valid, it would seem that this was a case of repeated abduction. This incident caught the attention of all sorts of organizations, from private institutions to intelligence agencies and the military. Karina was put through the ringer with interrogations in multiple communities, TV appearances, and government research. She also passed psychological evaluations, as well as a lie detector test.
Oh, wow.
Yet in some corners of the UFO community and general public, she was doubted. Fast forward a few years, and Karina's experiences in 1991 and 2003 gained credibility, with a number of people coming to believe her accounts. One among such people would be Dr. David Jacobs, a historian and ufologist who has researched alien abductions for over 40 years. He suggested that UFO encounters are a real thing with a specific pattern. Firstly, there's the initial contact at a young age. The following phase would be experiencing lost time or missing hours during encounters with such non-human entities. Next, the physical examinations. A staggering 98% of every UFO abduction report proves this to be true. And in some peculiar cases, there were claims of repeated abductions. Dr. Jacobs also suggested that certain bloodlines could be monitored by these aliens, which would explain why both mother and child had cryptic marks and mystery infections. His research further claims that aliens are engaged in a hybrid program, aiming to create a new species by combining human and alien DNA. This theory would also support Karina's claim, as she reported seeing a UFO hovering over her house, being taken on board, and experiencing medical procedures. You might think this bogus at first, but consider this. If aliens did exist, there would be a compelling reason to abduct humans, which very much aligns with this theory. Dr. Jacobs' research explores the psychological effects of alien abductions on those who have experienced them. Karina's case is a prime example of all the effects that can result from such encounters. Specifically, she had struggled with fear, anxiety, and a deep-seated feeling of being chosen or selected for a purpose beyond her control. For several months, she had the same question: why me? One morning, Karina had arranged for her son to see a doctor when she saw it. Yellow, burnt-like treetops near her home, which suggested possible non-human activity monitoring. This, combined with the similarities in their experiences, suggests that Karina's family may have been under surveillance or subject to repeat abductions. Despite the numerous skeptics who questioned Karina Sable's statements, quite a number of witnesses have come forward, supporting her claims of the events in Aldergrove and Okanagan. These witnesses claim to have seen the same things Karina saw on those nights. You see, in the final days of July and early August 2003, UFO sightings in British Columbia, much like Canada, had news and reports of mysterious sightings skyrocket. It wouldn't be so far-fetched to assume that Karina and Jane's apparent abduction could have occurred during this window. During her previous encounter, A total of 15 reports were filed that night, while her second experience was confirmed with over 200 reports documented by investigators in British Columbia. Among the various sightings, one report from a Kelowna resident, coincidentally Karina's own city, is especially intriguing and deserves a closer look. 3 days after Karina's incident on the 31st of July, the witness claimed that she had gotten out of bed sometime after midnight, unable to sleep. She stepped out into her yard to get some fresh air and look at the night sky. At that moment, she observed a bright light that first appeared to be a plane, but the way it moved was unlike any she had seen.
Why does she keep
Similarly
falling for this?
to Karina, she described what she saw as an almond shape and said it had a luminous green color. Only moments earlier, she could hear all the usual sounds of the night: coyotes, insects, and even distant traffic. But as the glowing green craft went across the sky, everything became absolutely silent. It was as if someone had clicked off a switch, she said. Like with every story, there are two sides, and within the pool of witnesses, some skeptic sharks circle to the surface. On the 22nd of August 2007, Karina published her book titled The Collectors, a Canadian UFO Experience. This release attracted many non-believers who raised doubts about Karina's case, questioning the authenticity of her claims and arguing that her book lacks depth and new insights. They claimed the book was merely repeating what other experiencers and researchers have already reported, potentially seeking personal gain. Here's what UFO expert Rutkowski had to say about the sightings. There are more than 1,000 UFO reports in Canada a year, and I figure about 95% of the sightings I investigate can be explained. The strange objects often turn out to be airplanes, satellites, fireballs, or more recently, drones. For the rest, there's nothing to suggest that otherworldly visitors are responsible, as tempting an explanation as that may be for some. There's no conclusive evidence that aliens are visiting us, although it's a wonderful theory. There's also no proof of that, and it's very prevalent that people are believing things that seem far-fetched. According to Rutkowski, people's concerns about their future was leading them to look to creatures from elsewhere for rescue. Let's adopt Rutkowski's view for a second and analyze this story from the role of a skeptic. Firstly, there's the lack of concrete evidence in Karina Sable's case. It's already an established pattern that UFO cases have multiple witnesses, and you could take this as proof, but with no physical evidence, such as video footage or pictures, it becomes difficult to take these claims seriously.
I'll tell you what most of these claims are, okay? A ton of people who've experienced this, what I find extraordinary is those ones who maybe had a Christian background, as soon as they mention in Jesus' mighty name or in Jesus' name, it vanishes and goes. So the ties and the links between that and demonic activity, or that being demons, which is what I believe in, that these are just fallen angels, demons who appear to you, and the kidnappings do take place. They're trying to have kids and so forth. And I know it sounds crazy, okay? But I'm telling you the truth. All right. And that's how Nephilim, if you don't know anything about Nephilim, giants and all of this, then read the Bible. You begin to understand exactly what I'm talking about. But I believe this is the case. She's getting abducted by demons, guys. Okay. And it could be a bloodline thing, generational things. Generation curses are real. They do exist. That's why I've been observing this video and just analyzing carefully to be able to, see if there's anything else apart from it. It keeps on being repeated, the exact same thing. She's falling for the exact same tricks. And throughout the whole thing, nothing's mentioned about, okay, maybe I need to pray. Maybe this might be spiritual rather than aliens that live in Mars, and they're flying from Mars, and then they're chasing me from Aldous or wherever she lived, and then they're chasing me, and then 12 years later, these are some lazy aliens. It took them 12 years to chase you down another path. You get the gist. So that's exactly what I believe. And what I want you to do is go to the Motech channel, YouTube channel, and watch the rest of this video, basically. I want you to go ahead and do that. Smash the like button. Let me know in the comments what to check out next. God bless.